Hi, my name is Chris and this is Battle Nonsense. The last beta of LawBreakers has just come to an end, and so it's time to take one last look at the netcode of this game to find out what you can expect when it releases next week on the 8th of August. If you haven't seen my first netcode analysis for LawBreakers, where I told you about its network model, the update rates, some issues that I found during my tests, and explained which factors have a significant impact on your experience in online multiplayer games, then you can find a link to that video in the description down below. So first of all, let's take another look at the game servers of LawBreakers, which are provided by Amazon's cloud service AWS. This image here shows the locations of Amazon's current and upcoming data centers. You will notice that there are none in South Africa, Russia and the Middle East. This means that players who live there must connect to data centers that are very far away from them. And that means that they will have to play at a very high ping of 200 milliseconds or even more, and so they will not have a good online experience. The reason why this is a problem that affects all players, even those who live very close to one of Amazon's data centers, is that getting shot by a player who has a very high ping results in the rather frustrating experience of receiving that shot far behind cover, which I will tell you more about a bit later. So what we are looking at here is where Amazon is able to provide servers to its clients. But just because Amazon has data centers in all these locations does not mean that the clients will use all of them for their service, like an online first-person shooter. LawBreakers, in example, does not seem to use the South America data center, as South America is not listed inside the region selection that we have in the game. This means that players from South America will connect to the US West and US East data centers, to which they will most likely have a ping that is greater than 150 milliseconds, which, as I said before, does not only affect their online experience, but also affects the experience of those players who live nearby one of Amazon's data centers. So for the future, I hope that the developers will add more server locations for this game. This can be done by also taking use of Google's and Microsoft's cloud services, as well as by adding servers from third-party hosters like Multiplay in locations where the cloud services are unable to provide servers in, which is what Titanfall 2 does to provide servers in as many locations as possible. Now, how about the update rates, which, as I explained in my previous video, tell us how many times per second the game is sending and receiving data. When I checked the network traffic with Wireshark, I noticed that the server is still sending a quite steady stream of 60 updates per second to the client, while the rate at which the client is sending data to the server still depends on the frame rate that the game is running at. So when your game runs at 60 FPS, then it sends 60 updates per second to the server. And when it is running at 170 FPS, then it sends some additional smaller data packets to the server, which increases its send rate to 170 updates per second. The increased bandwidth usage caused by this is not really concerning, as I will show you next. However, it is possible that the packets per second, or the amount of packets that your game sends per second, can become a limiting factor for the player's internet connection before the available bandwidth. Also, at a tick rate of 60 Hz, you don't gain much from sending data more frequently than 60 times per second, so I wonder if it might not just be better to simply limit the client's send rate to 60 Hz. Now, how much bandwidth does the game need and how much traffic does it generate? After I played the game for an hour, the game client downloaded 32.62 megabytes and uploaded 22.68 megabytes. So even though I was playing at 170 FPS, the game did not need a lot of bandwidth, despite its 60 Hz tick rate and my client's send rate of 170 updates per second. When we take a look at the bandwidth used by the game while I was playing, then we can see that the download rate stays below 100 kilobits per second and the upload rate stays below 50 kilobits per second, which means that the bandwidth requirements are very low. Now let's get to the network performance, or the delay that two players experience when they play on the same server. Again, please make sure that you watched my first netcode analysis of LawBreakers, where I explained my testing method and why I know that I was playing on a game server hosted in Frankfurt, to which I had an ICMP ping of 18 milliseconds. So long story short, the delays I measured in the latest beta are nearly identical to those that I measured in my first test, which means that the network performance did not degrade between the different game builds. Furthermore, these results are very good and really close to Overwatch, But when you compare the results from LawBreakers to those from Overwatch, then you must keep in mind that my ping was 7 milliseconds lower when I tested LawBreakers, so the delay is not quite as low as what you get in Overwatch, but it is still very impressive. So network performance wise, LawBreakers looks very good. But how about those issues with the hit registration that I noticed during my first test, like where my shots didn't always register? Well, I'm happy to report that this issue seems to be fixed, as I could not reproduce it anymore in the last beta. Also, the other issue where at high pings I had to aim behind the enemy player to hit him does not exist anymore, as you can see here in this example. However, this brings us to the issue that I mentioned in the beginning of this video. Due to the fact that many players do not have access to low latency servers near them, we will have more players with more than 200 milliseconds after launch than we have seen during the beta. And again, this is not the fault of those players who simply want to play the game they bought. They just don't have any other data center to connect to. The result of this, however, is not only that the experience of those players who live very far away from the data center will suffer, but also those players who live very close to a data center will not have a perfect online experience, as they will receive damage behind cover, as we have seen in the beta. This is why the experience in all fast-paced online games depends on the amount of server locations where the game servers are hosted, and the matchmaking of the game, which must ensure that all players have a low ping to the data center, which can be tricky in games that have a small player base. So based on my tests and my own experience playing the beta, LawBreakers hit registration feels precise, the netcode is very fast, and the servers seem to be quite robust. The issue that I see personally is that the server coverage could be better, and as a result 150 milliseconds or more will be the lowest ping for many players. That said, I also want to mention again that the ping that you see inside the scoreboard is not the result of an ICMP echo request. It also includes the processing delays of your client, which do affect your lag. This is why you will notice that your own ping that is displayed in the scoreboard is affected by your frame rate, where when your frame rate increases, your ping decreases. This is something that I showed you in the first test that I did for LawBreakers. Besides adding servers in more locations, I also hope that the developers will include some network performance icons that tell the player when his ping to the server is too high or when his connection is suffering from packet loss. Because right now, even at a ping of 580 milliseconds, the game does not tell you that there is something wrong with your connection, which is why you have a bad experience. So I hope that you enjoyed this updated netcode analysis of LawBreakers, and if you like this kind of niche content where I take a look at the inner workings of video games and show you how these affect your experience, then you can help me to cover the costs of this channel by supporting me on Patreon. The link is in the description below. Also, if you want to stay up to date on what I'm currently working on, then you can follow me on Twitter or Facebook. The links are also in the description of this video. And if you don't want to miss the next one, then you might want to subscribe to my channel and click on that little bell icon below this video to receive a notification when I upload the next one. So if you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like, subscribe for more, and I hope to see you next time. Until then, have a nice day and take care. My name is Chris and this was Battle Nonsense.